e-commerce as the pre-lunch session. I mean, this is probably the fifth time this year already that we've had. So I think it's probably a message that we got to stay hungry and stay foolish. And I'm sure there'll be quite a few questions around that today. Just to get a good sense of whom we have today in the audience, I mean, how many of you all would probably come with an offline retail background? You can just raise your hands to get a sense. Okay, probably less than 20%, okay, which means everybody else is a pure play online retailer. Okay, feels a bit like being an IMAI. How many of you all would actually bought a product in the last 1 month online? Okay, so at least we have more online customers, which is good. And since I guess most of us are retailers here, how many of you all would believe that in the next 5 years' time, online retail would sell more than offline retail in your product category? Wow, okay. So I think the audience almost entirely believes that in the next 5 years, offline modern retail will continue to sell more than online retail. I'm sure that we're going to be headed for some pretty interesting discussions. So since we are largely people with a finance background and many CFOs over here, so I thought probably you might appreciate if we start with some numbers. So some numbers are 100, 80, 50, and 1. Not exactly a countdown in a strange way, but just to provide some perspective and context for discussion, I mean 100% is the rate of growth of online retail in 2012 versus 2011. In 2011, online retail grew by 40%. So that's basically how it's grown. 100% is also the rate of growth of search in almost all the product categories. And top search categories today being fashion and lifestyle products, and including a whole range of other products on beauty, grocery, etc. So both from a search perspective, commerce perspective, I mean, e-commerce is landing, or the internet is landing in a pretty interesting way. The other interesting part which I not cover is 500% is the actual rate of growth of e-commerce, okay, in 8 states in India, which is Bihar, UP, Jharkhand. I mean, so those are the kind of places which have been growing at almost 5x times over last year. And 80%, incidentally, is a number which 80% of the top 80 US online retailers or e-commerce players are actually offline retailers. So that's basically what you're seeing as a data point in a more mature market. I think it might probably beg the question, which way would India go? Because China is showing some very different characteristics about who exactly is winning the game. 50%, the number which I learned earlier this week, is approximately the total percentage of global e-commerce, okay, which will happen in Asia this year. So 50% of global e-commerce will happen in Asia this year. 46%, I think, to be precise. And China this year overtakes US in e-commerce. And Taobao in China will do more e-commerce this year than Amazon and eBay combined globally. That's basically how the center of gravity of e-commerce is shifting to our geography. Some may say that probably India is 7 or 8 years behind, so they're probably interesting investment opportunities. And 1% is the total contribution of e-commerce to almost all, or less than 1%, offline retailers. So which has got a very fundamental belief concept that in offline retail, if e-commerce is contributing less than 1%, is it really a game? So I have not touched upon margins, because all these numbers, if we just put a minus sign to the left, that will probably reflect the margins in e-commerce today. And hence the entire thought about profitability versus growth. So I guess what we have today is a very interesting panel with reasonably deep insights and experiences to share. And we wanted to keep it around where we share our perspectives and give enough time for Q&A. I would much appreciate instead of we having just a Q&A session at the end, if you have questions, you might want to just hand over your handwritten questions in advance so you're able to collect it, including the panel member whom you would like to answer, and your name and organization. So we can start collecting questions as we go through the process. So today's discussion largely about funding profitability in e-commerce. And I wanted to start out with Akash. Akash has been a retailer earlier, he's been an investor, and now has Snapdeal, which is probably one of